right. Can you guys see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm just going to go back to those quickly so you guys can remember what the images actually looked like. Is there anyone that wants to share what they chose and why, or just share which number that they picked, although we did give you the opportunity for multiple choice? And feel free to introduce yourself with your name and your affiliation, whether it's Friends Group or other organization.
All right. I have a little speech problem, but I'm Scott McKay with Friends of Chestnut Mountain. I picked number 3 because it looks like I'm lifting somebody up. And that's what I like to do, help others.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us today, Scott. Anyone else?
I went with number 7 because I'm feeling motivated and powerful. I just had a good meeting and he's getting me in touch with more people that are going to help me actuate the changes I want to see in my park. You know, like buying land, getting exercise equipment, and connecting to all the neighborhood associations that border me.
Great, thank you for sharing, Jim.
Oh, I went with 5, the peace sign. To me, what's going on in the world and around Atlanta feels like the 70s, the late 60s and the 70s. And so, you know, I just wish for peace. And so that's why I put that up there.
Thanks, Valerie. I know that we have some others that have joined us since then. If you're not sure what we're just doing a temperature check, and we had the chance to share how we were feeling using the poll and the images. But if there's anyone else that joined us afterwards, feel free to, you know, share which one you would have picked, even if you missed it. Also, you can put your name and affiliation in the chat as well. All right, well, as most of you know, when we host these meetings, it's really about your time and your ability to share and have discussion and learn and network from each other. And I really appreciate the, you know, consistency and everyone continuing to show up, even as we've shifted these monthly meetings to a virtual format, and how we're really trying different things. We've started to implement the poll. We're going to be trying breakout sessions today, which is going to group us into smaller discussions just for a short period of time. And so obviously appreciate everyone's patience on the technological side, especially as this is Marilyn's first time, but also, you know, your input and your participation in the meeting is greatly appreciated as well. So I just wanted to do a quick introduction of the agenda. So we sort of did the attendee introductions. Again, you can put your name and group affiliation in the chat. And then we're going to have our guest speaker today do a presentation. That's Eunice Glover, who's the chair of NPU-I and a big supporter of parks in that area, and talk about the idea of community engagement and inclusion. And then we'll leave that up to you all for a discussion, including those breakout sessions. And then, as we always do in our meetings, give Park Pride updates. There's a lot of events coming up, some that hopefully you'll be able to attend, and then giving you the space for your announcements. So, oops, sorry. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now because we obviously wanna be a little bit more informal at this part. And Marilyn, just to let you know, you can close the poll sharing results so that everyone can get that off their screens and we can see each other. And I just wanted to put the floor over to Eunice, but first to say that inclusion, you know, is a value, an organizational value of Park Pride. And, you know, we obviously know that parks have not always been a space that are welcoming to all people, whether that's for policy reasons in the past, especially with segregation, but also just different ways that people have been able to access or not access parks because of their different abilities, as well as whether they even have parks in their neighborhoods. And so as friends groups, you are really key to being in your community and being that voice and helping to make sure that everyone in your community has a say in what your parks can look like and how you can really shape those spaces to be a vibrant place and that meets the unique needs of your community. And so we just wanted to engage you in this conversation and get, you know, those ideas flowing, because sometimes we know that it's not always easy to make sure that everyone has voice at the table. And so I'm going to turn it over to Eunice, and she's going to give a presentation, and then you'll have a chance to do a question and answer session, and then we'll do our breakout groups. And I have a prompt question for us. So Eunice, you're muted.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to speak before you. Now, to set the tone, there are things about me that you should be aware of. I've been a professor at a few universities, but this talk, you will not be asked to write a paper, and there will be no test based on this talk, okay? So you can calm down. A little bit about my background, and it drives my love for parks. Many years ago, before I came to Atlanta, I was a long distance runner, and I ran about 20 miles every week and working. Atlanta was not easy for me to run the roads because the roads did not really support that. And that's where I ran in the little bedroom community that I came from in Columbia, Maryland. So when I came to Atlanta, I lived in Midtown, and I ran in Piedmont Park. And that began the love story with the parks in Atlanta. And there are some of the most beautiful parks that you could find almost anywhere. Now, one of the things that I do want to emphasize, and I will share a email so that you can have a copy of what I'm talking about. And it's entitled the Atlanta Community Engagement Playbook. The thing that's so delightful about Atlanta, and it can be a little complicated at the same time, there have been so many new people to move into the Atlanta and metro area in the last 3 years. So engagement is not necessarily that simplistic, okay? You have the generational issues, people who work and people who do not work. And when people work, they leave your community and their time is somewhat limited. And you have people that may be difficult to communicate with because they're not on any type of media. So those are the challenges, but I also call them the opportunity. And one of the most important things in getting a park ready for the Friends is to get yourself very organized. NPU-I, the Neighborhood Planning Unit I, which I'm the chair of, has dozens of parks, but we're taking them one at a time. And right now we're in West Manor Park, and we are also in Isabel Gates Webster Park. And we do have Pauline Drake with us, who has Jenny Drake Park. But there are many, many more parks, and Pauline is one of the top people around who manages a park in a way that you want everybody to do. So you want to get very knowledgeable about the park and the roles that you want people to play within the park. The two parks that I'm working on right now, I'm in those parks at least twice a week. And I'm getting to really know what people do when they come to the parks. And one of the most important things in your planning and organizing process is the community right around the park. Because a community very close to a park is almost always highly impacted by that park. Now, it does not necessarily mean they are utilizing the park, okay? That's part of your planning process. But when I go to the parks, I'm able to see the individuals who come to the park. For instance, Isabel Gates Webster Park is on Peyton Road. And the thing about that park that people love is the walking track. There are three groups of people who walk that park: some in the morning, midday, and evening. And so those are facts about the park that I have been able to get down extremely well. And there are some issues with the park as well, and becoming knowledgeable about that. But most importantly, the community. And so one of the things that I try to do, and it's pretty successful, when I open my meetings in NPU-I, I use a PowerPoint to drive my meetings. And on the PowerPoint are pictures of the park so that people can see the park. So I'm always marketing the parks. That's what I'm doing always. And with West Manor Park, I'm looking at the entire area around West Manor Park, and I have reached out to the neighborhoods, and I send data to the neighborhoods about the park and the pictures. And that data invites them to get involved in the park. Now, COVID-19 has provided us with a challenge, but around any subject is opportunities and challenges. And you can turn challenges into opportunities, okay? And we just had our first Zoom meeting about West Manor Park, and the excitement grew exponentially. Those that I have identified and people who have reached out to me with interest, okay? Now, getting back to planning, I'm planning all of the individuals within a certain conference situated around the park. And I do this based on the neighborhoods that surround the park. And the neighborhoods closer to the park, I have large numbers of seniors that live in those neighborhoods. And at one time, they were highly involved. But anything we do as friends of the park, I want them involved. Now, how do I do that? We have just put together a postcard program. And we will be sending postcards to all of the homes around West Manor Park. Those that are a little distance away, I'm reaching them via the neighborhood associations. But those very close to the park, I'm having difficulties. And so the postcards going to the neighborhoods are where we're going to start. And the neighborhood is West Manor Circle and West Manor Lane. And we will be sending postcards because they sit very close to the park. And even though they may not be active in the way that we see things, they are more knowledgeable because they sit that close to the park about what goes on there and what works for the immediate community. And we're very, very interested in that. Now, meantime, one of the other things that I do, I'm always keeping notes about what people have to say to me about the particular park. Even when I have meetings with the neighborhood associations, I'm keeping notes. And those notes will go back to the Friends of West Manor Park so that they can get more data about the community and its love and its challenges where the parks are concerned. I have an individual who is working on communication with groups of people who are close by and who may not be hooked up to any type of media. And that's where our postcards are starting, okay? And then there is a calling post where we will get phone numbers and call and let people know when there are projects that will be in that particular park. I got a list of roles from Park Pride. Ellen sent me a list of roles, and I sent it out to the friends to identify what area they were interested in. And interestingly enough, many of them, at least 3, were interested in cleaning and maintenance area for the park. And one of the groups is with the YMCA, and he has a troop of young people that he works with. So that will enable us to bring in the youth. And when I look at organizations around the park, I'm also looking at schools, and I'm looking at churches, and I'm looking at businesses. All of those individuals are friends of West Manor Park. And there is an individual who plays the role of membership. And they also connect with NPU-I to help us reach out to more organizations. They're all individuals that are very close, and businesses and organizations to the park. We want inclusion. The more inclusion you have, the more information drives the needs of the park and the changes, and the better the outcome is. And more people also participate in the park. So we do focus on issues. We did a meeting about that, and that meeting was about a week and a half ago. And based on those issues, we will be creating a plan. And part of the plan will be information and communication, as I mentioned, and that will enable us to develop flyers. People are more visual than they are auditory, so those flyers will go to the organizations around the park. And when I'm in the park, I wear my mask. And when people are in the park, I walk up and introduce myself to them. What we were able to do very recently is to partner with other organizations having to do with the park. And we partnered with AARP, and we ended up winning $250,000 in fitness equipment. It's adult fitness equipment, and it is absolutely awesome. Now, COVID-19 prevented us from having a large event that would have included the mayor of Atlanta. But I have a team, the marketing team, working with AARP to come up with a way that we can have that event and not be a crowd of people in the park. So we're working on that because we want to honor AARP for the donation. And the Friends of West Manor Park are already looking at different things that involve all generations. They would like a walking area for the seniors. In that area, the seniors have been going to a high school that doesn't work for them that well. They like to walk on the track. But that track is utilized for games in the entire metro area, if not in the state of Georgia. So that's an impact to the school, and we want to bring them to West Manor Park. Our Friends group is also looking at the children's playground. We have a beautiful one. I believe it was designed just a couple of years ago. But one of the things that they're looking at are the 12 to 14-year-old. Are they fully engaged? A lot of the things in the children's play area are for toddlers. So we're trying to make sure the inclusion of utilization is there. And this park also is the park that is utilized by the city for jazz concerts. And we did have one of the business people on the Friends indicated.
Looks like Eunice, you may.
Oh, am I running out of time? That's okay. You can ask me questions now. Is that good?
Yeah.
Is it time for that? Okay. It's 29, so you can ask me questions. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Should I put it in the chat?
Oh, okay.
Let's see.
All right.
Well, I'll just ask you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure that I heard, but did you tell the group the location of NPU-I and the kind of sort of the span where it's located and in relation to other parks?
NPU-I is in the southwest part of Atlanta. There are 21,000 residents, and it goes from Martin Luther King Jr. Drive all the way to Cascade Road, and it goes, well, it incorporates all of that area, and some people call it Cascade Heights, but there are different areas when people say Cascade Heights. But it's a large population, and it's also one of the top 3 greenest canopies in the city of Atlanta. So trees and all of those things are very prolific in the area.
I'm curious to know what what is NPU's role with the park engagement that you're doing with all these different parks? How is NPU really engaged in that?
Well, our role is at the top level, pulling people in every neighborhood together around a park in their area. And the role is a very good one, in my opinion, because we're also seeing new people to the community, a lot of new people. And many of them have come to the city because they travel a great deal via the airlines. And so they're often in and gone. And so this information is information that would not necessarily come to them. And we identify people to be the leadership in the Friends of the Park.
I see.
Uh-huh.
That's great.
I may be wrong, but Eunice, doesn't every NPU have a parks and green space committee? Is that kind of part of the typical organizational structure?
Not necessarily. There are 25 NPUs throughout the city of Atlanta. And I'm also the second vice president of the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board, which is the umbrella organization for NPUs. They're all very different. And so some may focus on the parks and some may not necessarily focus on the parks. But the NPUs in my area, I'm reaching out to them when I find something that's wonderful, I love to share.
And you were also speaking about sort of a lot of things you're doing for seniors. Did that bubble up from the people that you saw using the park, or was that something that people were asking for because they weren't using the parks because they didn't feel like it, you know, had the things that they needed?
Well, I served on a program with AARP. It was a World Health Program as well in 2014 through 2016, age-friendly community. And they did a massive study all over the Atlanta area. And of course, the World Health Organization did it in other countries. And the study resulted in the things that were important to seniors. And at the top of the list was outdoors.
Interesting.
They wanted to be able to be outdoors and walk. And so parks were definitely in the need and the desire.
And so you kind of brought that into the parks and had a strong response from the people that was something that they're really looking for.
Yes.
Great. We've been talking about that too with Grant Park. How do we make sure we're serving that population that really is growing? So that's really interesting to hear about your relationship with AARP.
Well, it truly is growing because a lot of people are not aware that Atlanta is the top city in the entire country for the senior population. People think in terms of Florida, but that's a whole state. We have the largest population in the city of Atlanta. And seniors are coming here whether they have children here or not, because the climate is even kill. We don't have massive extremes in weather like you may find in Florida and other places. And the city of Atlanta did adopt that plan and made it their own. And if you're interested, I will send you a copy of that as well, because it's very helpful.
I'm curious, have you found a way to get teenagers into the park? It's the one group, at least in our area, that doesn't seem to be using the park. There's seniors, there's little kids, there's families, but the teenagers don't go there. Do you notice that also?
I see quite a few of them at Isabel Gates Webster Park. And that's the park that has that beautiful track. C.T. Martin, a council member, put that track there, and it's like walking on feathers. It's just such a walkable place. And in the middle is a huge green area. They will come there and play sports. I don't see that many in West Manor. And it's probably something that I will put on my agenda and really start noticing and trying to find a way. But one of the things that I would immediately come up with would be the schools as a way of connecting with the seniors. Mm-hmm. Well, with the students. Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hold on, I'll put my video on so you can see me. My name's James. Thank you for coming today. So there does seem, we're just starting the process with, I'm at Cedar Park. We're just starting the visioning process. We got one of the grants into CAB last year. And there's this great field. It's not huge. And I have this vision for it for free play, which I think would be nice. Like I envision people like throwing a Frisbee around or kicking a soccer ball or just laying around. And there seems to be this mindset that if there's an open space, something seems to be happening, something needs to happen to it. So I was wondering if you could share some thoughts on how I might be able to effectively advocate for that space to remain free play or to be free play.
Yeah. One of the things that we do, and we do it extremely well, we partner with a lot of organizations. And that's the NPU, the Bicycle Coalition, PEDS, AARP, and I can go on and on and on with the partnerships that we have. And the partnerships truly help you to understand some of the needs that people have. And one of the things that I will be looking into, and I'm glad you brought it in, Isabel Gates Webster is a kind of what you would call a two-story park. I talked about the lower level where you have the walking area. Up on a hill is a tennis court, and there's another court up there. And it is rare that anyone is playing any games up there. And we're going to get involved in the sports and reaching out to organizations that support tennis and organizations that support some of those other sports. And one of the things that we will be also looking at as part of it is parking. In other words, if you're going to bring a team there to play sports, even a school team, what's the transportation support that you need to have? But it gets back to reaching out and partnering with organizations. When you look at the space you have, what does your friends of the park believe it should be utilized for? And then you take that information and reach out to partnerships, because it enables you to take a plan to the final conclusion. You have to unmute yourself.
Unfortunately, a lot of people are advocating, thank you. Unfortunately, a lot of people are advocating for the space to be a dog park and, you know, find consensus rules, but we already have a dog park 1 mile down the road. And it makes me really sad to think of this nice little field being fenced in and becoming a dog park.
Well, I would, if you've got two groups of people, if you have a way of taking that space and making it look, let's say you feel it should be, I don't know, some sort of sports that teenagers play. Well, if there's a way to make a picture so that people could see what you're talking about, that often helps when people are confused. The visual gives them the right picture.
Like a drawing, a mock-up kind of what it would look like.
It gives you the right picture, and then you reach out to your partner and you would find out some things that you wouldn't think of that will help you to market how you feel that space needs to be utilized.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
James, this is Michael Halicki, Executive Director with Park Pride, and I'll just offer that another thing that I would add on to what Eunice was describing is to try to introduce the idea of flexible space being more important than just a single-use space. And I'm reminded of a Frederick Law Olmsted quote in a documentary where he talked about in a symphony hall, having a big open space where you can hear music is an end unto itself, but there's a tendency in parks to put a bunch of things in and to fill them up, and not just to enjoy the open spaces that can be used for a variety of different things. And we're actually coming back around when you think about some of the early efforts in the parks movement with Frederick Law Olmsted that were in response to the Spanish flu and the pandemic of its time, of having open space where people could simply go and be, that there is a good argument to be made that a flexible space that could be used for picnics and ball field games and other types of things might actually serve the community more than just one use. And so I think that there are ways that leading people to think about all of the above scenario of an open field also might be a way to kind of engage your community into thinking about leaving the area open so that it's more flexible.
Thank you, Michael.
If I could just add one thing, and this, Eunice, you had my mind jumping all over the place on the role of seniors and thinking about the role of seniors connecting with their parks and the demographic changes. Right now, there's an Activate ATL effort of developing a comprehensive parks and recreation plan for the city. And there's a series of different meetings happening in different quadrants of the city and looking at how each of those is different, which again, I think is something that the NPU system helps to reinforce, making sure that we recognize we don't need a one-size-fits-all strategy, which I think is true. But hearing you talk made me think about the changing demographics of Atlanta and the aging population and ways that we could look at ways to anticipate needs and ways that, for example, I know community gardens, one of the selling points are multi-generational spaces where you'll have seniors and young people gardening in spaces, that is something that has been seen as a strength of community gardens. And I can remember a couple of years ago, we had a group come from AARP and presented at our conference from Kansas, where the AARP local chapter had championed a grandparents park that was really looking at grandparents who want to take their kids, not to come over to the grandparents' house, but to get out to the park, and having parks in their area are an important part of this. So I'm curious if you have thoughts with the citywide master plan to make sure that thinking about planning for seniors is something that doesn't get lost in the shuffle, and if you have any thoughts on how to elevate both the seniors, as well as there was a comment about teens and different groups. So thinking about ways to make sure that different, thinking about accessibility, not just for the surrounding community, but of those different age groups that maybe need to be courted to come use those spaces more directly.
Well, I have given it some thought, especially with Isabel Gates Webster. About a few months ago, I was there and there were a group of seniors sitting on the edge of the park on the bench, and some were in wheelchairs and some had the walkers. And I started talking with them, and I was so happy that they felt comfortable talking with me. And they did share with me that they enjoyed the park, but they indicated to me that, and they had a hard time saying this, that they could not quite make it back home to use the restroom. And so the group that we pulled together for that park, what we're looking at is a center for that park. It doesn't have to be the largest one, but one that will allow seniors to go there and be safe and use the facilities if they have to. And there's another problem with it. The park has 2 levels. The top level is where the playground is. And many seniors do have responsibility for grandchildren. So they have difficulty getting the children up the stairs that has no rail. In fact, that park was looked at by AARP for that fitness equipment, and they said no based on that. So we do have an opportunity there, and it's one that we're going to take up and make sure it's highly inclusive for everyone.
Thank you all for your questions, and thank you, Eunice, for sharing your wisdom. And I feel like it was very, useful for so many different friends groups, and really appreciate that you incorporated some of the challenges that are now, happening due to COVID-19, especially with inclusion and community engagement, and making sure that we're reaching out to everyone in our community. And, we talk a lot about social media and Facebook and, other digital engagement methods. And obviously we're here on Zoom, but always wanting to make sure that everyone is able to participate in various ways. So I recognize that that's also a challenge. We're going to do a quick poll to lead us into our breakout discussion, which is going to last roughly 5 minutes. So if Marilyn, you wanted to open up the poll. And again, this is anonymous, and it's really just a level setting so that we can all get a better understanding of where we are in community engagement with our communities. And there's no right or wrong answer for this question. And it should have popped up onto your screen, so don't X out. As you're filling that out, Marilyn, if you want to start setting the breakout rooms, but do not click go on those yet. We'll give you guys another 20 to 30 seconds to respond to the poll. And I'm going to put the prompt question for the breakouts in the chat. So this should follow you as you go to your breakout. Unfortunately, the slideshow cannot do that. So I'm going to put it in the chat so everyone can see it. And if you're on the phone, those of you that are in the group, make sure that you verbally say that, as well as what I will do right now. So we're going to break out into groups and talk about what opportunities do you see in your community to make your park more inclusive, and how, as the Friends of the Park group, can you support that work? So Marilyn, do you want to close the poll and share the results?
Sure.
Great. So it looks like there's a wide variety of experience here, and there's no, again, right or wrong answer. If you have answered other and you'd like to put that answer in the chat, feel free to do so. But I feel like there's always new people and new ways that we can think about in reaching out. So we can close that poll, and I'm just going to finish typing the prompt here. You all should have that in your chat. So again, we're going to do breakouts for about 5 minutes. You should be with roughly 5 people. And we're going to discuss what opportunities do you see in your community to make your park more inclusive, and how could the Friends of the Park group support that work. So Marilyn, if you want to put us into breakout groups, and I will send you a message when we're ready to come back.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Hey, Eunice, did you get the invitation?
Yeah.
Oh no,
So we
Micah,
try to be careful to engage everybody.
Micah got cut off on our discussion.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I know, I'm sorry. There's never a perfect time for the breakout sessions. It's either too little or too long. So I hope that you all had wonderful discussions. One of the things that came up was some great ideas in ours, and Rosa was sharing some information. And I just wanted to let you all know that if there's anything that you know now and you want to share in the chat with others, feel free to do that. Or if there's anything that you would like to share as a follow-up to everyone, let me know. You can send me an email and I'll be sending a follow-up email. Mm-hmm. So as we come back from our discussions, you know, we're going to take a couple of minutes until roughly 7:05 when we'll do the update portion to just share out to the full group anything that you discussed that you thought was particularly important or that you were surprised about. And also I want you to kind of think about what are the next steps for you or for your group, and you know, do you think that there's ways that Park Pride can support you in this work?
I think we talked about making connections and that being the important point, and helping us make those connections with the right people. Certainly it takes a lot of work on our end to like make the connections with the communities next to us and just be involved.
Pauline, did you want to share more about your comment in the chat?
Yes, it'll be fine. What I was thinking is that as Eunice was describing some of the things that are going on with NPU-I and parks, it might be an initiative that Park Pride might consider. That is, ways of getting NPUs and parks more connected, because I had sort of assumed that every NPU had a parks committee because NPU-I has had one for a while. But even if every NPU has a parks committee, it may not be active. So that's my idea, my suggestion.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in going in that direction, get in touch with me. APAP is probably the best place to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta Planning Advisory Board.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Anyone else want to share what they think their next steps might be based on the conversation?
This is Micah. So I'm in Morningside, and I belong to 3 Friends of Park groups here, but all located within Morningside. NPUF is very active, but not really on the park side, and maybe because the different neighborhood groups do have strong parks groups. So I'm sure it, excuse me, I'm sure it comes down a lot to personality. Looks like NPU-I has a very strong and willing personality to take on so much. Running an NPU is not an enviable position. But we do have a new group here called Morningside Cares, which is about ripping off some other neighborhood groups of how we can get neighbors engaged and raise money for our parks, but also connect with park groups outside our neighborhood. So I was thinking to ask Ms. Glover a question earlier, but it's my usual sort of question for anybody. What sort of help are you looking for from outside your neighborhood, and what can we do to engage with each other? So our breakout session, the last thing I was starting to say is there's some controversy with our neighbors. My personal belief is I love seeing City of Atlanta residents on our trails, in our parks, using our parks, activating our parks. I love to see that. Some neighbors do not like to see that. You know, I bought this house I want to see me in my backyard and nobody else. So again, my personal bias, I love the idea of getting information out there about our parks to the neighbors, the citizens of Metro Atlanta, but also connecting the parks groups. So as far as what could Park Pride do, y'all are already doing so much. Maybe you're already doing everything for this, but anything like this to connect the friends groups and help us not have to reinvent the wheel, but hearing from Ms. Glover of how they did the community outreach, lessons learned, so that when I start a new venture, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I understand how do I reach out, and I can even call up, hey, Eunice, it's Micah. Remember, I love what you're talking about. I'm glad we met. So this sort of mixing, networking, and collaborations, I think is a huge help. And some of us, even further grassroots, probably make the Facebook group more active or do our parts to make some of those connections. So that's my rambling thoughts on it. Thanks.
Appreciate those insights, Micah. And we definitely are, trying to make any interaction that we have with the friends groups and bringing you together so that you can share those ideas. So I'm glad that you have caught on to that. Any last thoughts from anyone about this before we move into the update portion of the meeting?
Would this be where I ask about the Activate Atlanta meetings?
That's coming up in the update portion and coming next. So
I'll wait.
If there aren't any other things anyone wants to add, I can start with that. Did you have a specific question about it, Jemida?
I'll listen to what y'all say first, and maybe I'll answer it, and then I won't have to ask.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen again, and this is going to include some Park Pride updates. And just give me one moment. I'm going to leave it there so that I can still kind of see. So Activate ATL, as Michael had mentioned earlier, is actually an effort by the City of Atlanta Department of Parks and Recreation to develop a comprehensive master plan. And that is for system-wide plan for the Parks Department for the next 10 years. And there is a website that you can learn more about it. It's activate-atl.com, and you can see that there, and I'll also drop that in the chat once I figure out how to open it again. But that is something that is happening at the moment. There have been public meetings so far. There's also a survey, an online survey that we ask you to fill out, to share with friends, neighbors, anyone that you can think of. Some people will be getting a mailed survey. So if that's something that you receive, we definitely encourage you to fill that out as well. And I just also wanted to note that Park Pride is helping to lead the public engagement portion of Activate ATL. We are being supported in that by the Woodruff Foundation, and we're working alongside GAI consultants and others in the Parks Department to help lead this. And if Michael, you have any other points to share on that, you can do that. And also
mayor cancels Jim.
What was that, Rosa?
Sorry, I was talking to my son.
Okay. No worries. So yes, I'm gonna lead that into if you have any additional updates on that, Michael, and then also I will see that you guys have our grants workshop coming up. And that is required for all community building and legacy grant applications that are going to be happening for this year. And that is July 22nd. All of these events are on the Park Pride events webpage. And so we also encourage you to attend our next greenspace gathering. Eunice was talking about data, and you've been participating in these wonderful check-ins with our intern Marilyn, and we are going to be looking at highlights from that, and we want to share that information with you and talk about how you can use that in your community. So that's going to be the greenspace gathering. And then lastly, we are going to a virtual Parks and Greenspace conference that is August 17th. And these are all on our calendar. And I will let Michael give you some additional updates on some of these events happening.
Great. Can you hear me? So a couple of things that I'm going to cover. Number one, I just put into the chat 2 links, one of which relates to a supporter report column that I published last week that talks about our grant program that actually is very appropriate to think about what Eunice is talking about, of looking at making sure that we're engaging communities all throughout our city, through all the NPUs in their parks, and how that relates to the work with our grant program. Before I get there, the one last thing that I'll mention, I saw Kayla put in the link to Activate ATL, and I would encourage you all to take the survey. There's a survey on that website that you can actually chime in and give your perspective on what you think needs to be, what works, what you like, what needs to be improved with our parks and recreation system. And as we move towards a 10-year plan for capital investments, what are the priorities on that front? So I would encourage you all to check out both the survey. There are also a series of different public meetings that have been happening, and you can find out when the remaining public meetings are available. I would encourage you to check those out. But above all, the survey is, if you do one thing, go to Activate ATL, take the survey. The two things that I wanted to share, and let's see if I can share my screen. Right now, I think we're, let me pull something up. This is a map. Let's see if you can see this. Can you see the map? All right. So the supporter report column that I shared in the chat area was entitled "Local Parks, a Critical Part of a More Just and Equitable Society." And I really think that as we have been sheltering in place and the impacts of COVID-19, we've had this inversion of our park amenities, where the parks that are in our neighborhoods, the parks that are where people live, in some ways have become more important than the signature parks that you take your out-of-town guests to go check out, and the places that you go to where everybody's going to be. The places that everyone's going to be, you're, if anything, trying to shift your visitation to off-peak hours. And the idea that people should have parks within walking distance of where they live, if anything, is more important now than it ever was before. We have had the benefit of a grant program that has had support from the Woodruff Foundation as well as Home Depot that have provided dollars for a grant pool that are eligible to any of the different Friends of the Park groups within our service area. And the Woodruff dollars are specific to the City of Atlanta, DeKalb. We have also the dollars from Home Depot that are available on that front. This is an analysis that looks at the distribution of grants since the program started in 2004. And that red line that's there is something that was identified in Atlanta City Design, which is the city's overarching visionary plan for the city. And in there, they identify the growth line as, again, kind of a concept to get people thinking that oftentimes when we think about looking at issues of equity, I-20 becomes the starting point. What's south of I-20 and what's north of I-20. But when you look at the western portion of the city, and this map shows that when you look at those areas that are the high growth or stable growth areas that are north of the growth line, that area that's south of the growth line that's identified here actually kind of split that northwest quadrant in half. And again, this is something that, again, is not something that's etched in stone. And I think as the city continues to grow, this line becomes more fuzzy and continues to shift. But this is a way to look at different dimensions of the economics in the city. And also there are dimensions of this, of race, of economics in terms of those who have capacity versus those that don't, for matching dollars for grants for park improvements, for example. So this map gives you an idea of where the dollars have gone towards our Friends of the Park groups and conservancies that have applied for grants. And the story that this shares is that around $4.4 million since 2004 have been invested in park improvements through the grant program north of the growth line, and around $4 million have been invested south of the growth line. And then you'll see that there's these larger circles that are identifying specific areas where Park Pride has also gone to bat with additional philanthropic sources to bring additional dollars And there has been an effort with Park Pride's effort to recognize that some of the communities north of the growth line have greater means and capacity to raise dollars. So how do we use our connections in different ways to help communities that might not have the same points of access? So over that same time period, Park Pride has secured $4.5 million of philanthropic investments. 96% of that has gone south of the growth line, and 4% of that has gone north of the growth line. So that gives, I think, one thing that we wanted to do here is to provide greater transparency of showing, again, it's a competitive process and we don't dictate where the dollars go. It's groups that respond and apply for grants and help to support improvements in their areas. But it shows some idea of where those dollars have gone down to a neighborhood level, but also giving some analysis on this within this this frame of the growth line to give people an idea of how that breaks down. So number one, I wanted to share that. The other thing that we shared last week is that we have shared this with our funder and suggested a change, which the Woodruff Foundation is supportive of, that we waive the matching requirement for their grants in those areas that are in the community development impact areas. So those areas that are low income and middle income, that giving us the capacity to waive the matching requirement there and committing a third of the grant pool to go towards those different areas. So the way that I see that is it builds upon our efforts to serve communities in all of our service areas, both north of the growth line and south of the growth line. It also allows us not just to connect philanthropic resources to specific groups, but actually making a structural change to the program that makes it more accessible to communities that might be intimidated by that matching requirement and might have less capacity to meet that. So I would encourage you to check out that article and let us know your thoughts. And it also fits into the grant workshop that Kayla mentioned as an opportunity to engage. And again, this analysis was more focused on Atlanta. We also do have the information that kind of shares that larger area and with the dollars that we have that are available outside of those areas, but within our jurisdictions. And in the grant workshop, we will be sharing that information as well. So first off, any questions about what I've covered there? The second thing that I wanted to mention, and again, I'll share with you a separate link here, is the Parks and Greenspace Conference, which is August 17th, which I think, number one, I wanted to make sure that people had this on their radar, and I wanted to encourage you to check out the nature of our city is the theme of this year's conference. And if you go to that link and you check out the keynotes in particular, you can learn a little bit about the speakers. This is it's not a full day, but it's more of a 3/4 day session. We have worked with an outside virtual conference partner so that we all hear about the Zoom fatigue of watching a lot of these different Zoom calls and getting to the point that you can't take anymore. And we have worked with a production company to really make this a wonderful experience that I think folks will really enjoy. Our keynote speakers, I did want to point out, and again, the theme is the nature of our city and looking at the importance of having places to connect with nature and how our city is defined by our lush tree canopy. One of our speakers, a guy named David Haskell, has written 2 books, one called The Forest Unseen and the other called The Song of Trees. He is a passionate speaker about trees and people, and I think you'll find him to be an amazing speaker. We also have a guy named Jason Ward, who is an avid birder. He's an African-American birder and has been working with Audubon on the national level and has done a series of different YouTube programs called Birds of North America. He actually had Kristen Cooper on his program before Kristen Cooper was in the national spotlight from being in a situation being called out by a white woman where he had brought up the issue of having a dog off leash, and she twisted the situation into something and calling the police, and he videoed it and shared it with the world. And before that, he was just a birder who would like to go out to Central Park and was really doing that on the day that that event happened. But Jason Ward will be talking about his experiences as a black birder and really the changing face of conservation. I think he's a passionate speaker, and he's someone that people will really enjoy. We also have Christine Stratton, who is the head of the National Recreation Parks Association and has seen what's been going on a national level with urban park systems all across the U.S. And we're fortunate to have her. And last of all, Diane Jones-Allen, who's an African-American landscape architect who's done a lot of work in New Orleans, and we'll be talking about her work on landscape architecture and parks and equity. So it's going to be a great conference. I would encourage those who had it on their calendar for March. If you're registered for the conference, your conference registration will translate. But I would encourage you to check out the conference and to register. I also will mention that for folks that are community members, we do have discounts that are available. And so do not be put off by the registration cost, that if you're interested in coming, there's plenty of room for everybody there, and we want to see you there. So certainly reach out to Kayla, and we'll make sure that you are aware of all the different ways to make sure that you can be a part of the event.
Thank you, Michael. And so you can email us at friends@parkpride.org if that is something you're interested in and you'd like to attend the conference. Before we get into the attendee updates, I am going to circle back to Jemida had an additional question about Activate ATL, and in my got a little distracted. So Jemida, did you want to ask your question about Activate ATL?
Yes, I wanted to know, Winfrey, when we were in a small little breakout group, you mentioned that you did a video. Are other people doing video for the Activate? And if so, is something Activate did, or was that something that your friends group did? Because, you know, I might want to be a superstar.
You can be a superstar. That was Activate that did the video. They came to the park. They actually brought some kid-sized T-shirts, and I had about 5 kids ready to put the T-shirts on, and they put the shirts on and got on the swings and the swing sets, and then they did their close-up photograph in the park, and then I had an interview. There were questions that I asked on camera and answered, and yeah, I had my 15 minutes of fame there.
I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed that so much. I think that we have completed the ones that we're filming for that, but I do know that there is a push for you to do your own videos and share those on social media. So I'll send out an email that includes that information and attachment, and then that will get shared via social media on Park Pride, as well as the City of Atlanta Parks Department and Activate ATL. So does that answer your question, Jemida?
Yes, thank you. I look forward to the email.
Any other updates from anyone else? We have about 5 minutes left. I know there's not a lot happening in the parks because of COVID-19, but I appreciate all of you for attending and for the discussion, and I hope that everything will, you know, continue and we're able to get back into the parks and see you soon. And I know that sometimes, you know, we can feel a little hopeless about that, but every time you guys show up for this makes me feel very much part of community, and we hope that we're building that space for you as well. So thank you all for being here, and again, we'll follow up with an email and let us know if you have any questions. You can always reach the community building team at friends@parkpride.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much,
everyone.
Jill.
Bye. Bye.